com a Brandeis International Business School. Primeiro eu queria apresentar vocês ao EducationUSA, não sei se vocês já conhecem o que é o EducationUSA. O EducationUSA é uma rede de escritórios vinculada ao Departamento de Estado americano, que tem a missão de ser a fonte oficial de informação sobre estudos nos Estados Unidos, e é com base nessa missão que a gente organiza eventos com as universidades americanas para contar um pouco mais sobre o processo de aplicação e outras informações importantes para vocês nesse processo. No Brasil todo, são 40 escritórios do EducationUSA, que você pode procurar no nosso site, educationusa.org.br, tem toda a informação sobre o que o EducationUSA oferece e os escritórios, você consegue encontrar o escritório mais próximo de você. Hoje quem oferece esse evento especial é o escritório de São Paulo, na capital. Eu e o Davi trabalhamos aqui na Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie, e hoje a gente tem o prazer de receber a Brandeis International Business School, que está sendo representada pela Kelly Sugrue, right? And the floor is yours, Kelly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for having me. I am Kelly Sugrue. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions at Brandeis International Business School. I'm delighted that you could join us today. I will be going through some general information about graduate business programs in the US in terms of considerations, in terms of things to think about, and we'll be walking you some of the relevant details about the Brandeis International Business programs as well. So I hope to give you kind of some general knowledge as well as some specific knowledge about Brandeis. So as we think about studying graduate business school, you may, depending on where you are in your search, you may be farther along in terms of thinking through what types of programs you want, what destinations, what areas of the world in which you wish to study, or you may be in the earlier stages where you're just starting to explore the different types of programs and the decisions that you would need to make to determine which might be the best program for you. Obviously, as you're thinking through the types of graduate business programs, certainly the type of program is very key. Are you thinking about something like an MBA, which is a more general management degree, which gives you a breadth of curriculum options in terms of both quantitative and qualitative areas, and then the opportunity to explore further in electives? Or are you thinking about something more specialized? Within business education, specialized programs can be anything from accounting to marketing to analytics and finance, economics. So it does give you quite an array. The MBA tends to be a great option for students who tend to be in the more mid-level of their career or have gathered a couple of years of work experience and are now thinking about either moving up in their current area or potentially are trying to transition to a new area. The MBA gives you that foundation, that management foundation, and then lets you delve a little bit deeper into a concentration area potentially in order to gain a new skill set. Specialized master's degrees tend to be very helpful if you're looking for expertise in a very particular industry or functional area. So for example, for something like a Master of Science in Finance, it gives you that chance to focus and take the coursework all in finance so that you can get more in depth in particularly an area of finance and then work in the financial industry or in a financial role within a different industry. Some of you may be familiar with STEM designation. Within the United States, international students who don't have work authorization in the United States after coming and studying in the US have the option to do what's called optional practical training, which gives them an opportunity to typically work in the US for 1 year after they graduate from their master's degree. At Brandeis and at many other schools, there is something called the STEM designation, where if you are a STEM designated program, it allows graduates of that program to have the chance to extend their OPT, their work authorization, for an additional 2 years for a total of 3 years. So if you are thinking about potentially studying in the US after graduation, STEM designation programs give you that added advantage to extend your time in the US. Program length is something else to think about. Some programs in the US, especially those that are more specialized, are typically a year or so, a year and a half, whereas you tend to find that many of the MBA programs in the US tend to be a 2-year model. The US has been gaining momentum in online or in accelerated programs where it's only about a year of study, but most MBAs in the US do tend to be more like a 2-year MBA program. I mentioned concentrations. I think that is something that you may also want to think about as you're looking at different types of graduate programs, is how much flexibility do you want to be able to take electives in areas of interest? For example, within a program like Brandeis, like the MBA, we have concentrations in areas such as finance, data analytics, marketing, strategy and innovation, real estate. Whereas in something like the Master of Science in Finance, you may decide to study more in an area such as asset management or corporate finance and valuation. FinTech is a very big area in the Boston area in terms of a new technology that's emerging is how to use technology in the financial industry. So these are different areas that you can decide on. So as you think about a graduate business program, perhaps if you're thinking about something like an MBA, looking at the types of electives and concentrations that a school offers can also help determine whether it might be a good fit for you in terms where you want to end up professionally. I referenced obviously full-time programs, online programs. As you're aware, depending on the type of program that you're interested in studying in, you could be looking at hybrid models where there's both online and in-person format, fully online programs, full-time, part-time even, depending if you were looking to work and study at the same time. At Brandeis, most of our programs are full-time study, although we do have the option for both part-time study and for our MBA and our Master of Science in Business Analytics. We do have a chance to study in a hybrid fashion, in online or in person. Location is another key factor that students are often considering when they are looking at graduate business programs, whether it be in the US or elsewhere, is, what type of area do you want to study? Do you want to study in an area that perhaps is close to a major US city? Are you looking for something that is more rural or suburban? Those are other considerations. Brandeis University is located in the greater Boston area. So in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. Boston is a very old city in the United States in terms of the US history. And so it has a lot of history, education, combined with a number of new modern industries. So we have always been leading in healthcare, real estate, fintech, finance. A lot of these areas are quite extensive within the Boston area. So location of an institution can also help influence the types of job opportunities that may be most predominant in that area after graduation. Alumni network, career outcomes. As you look at schools, it's important to think through what type of network am I building? So much of the investment in graduate education is about the network you're building, both among your peers in the program as well as your fellow alumni upon graduating. And so taking a look at where the alumni network of that institution is most concentrated based on potentially where you're thinking about working can be an additional factor to consider. Experiential learning, I'll talk a little bit more about that in relation to Brandeis opportunities in just a moment, but experiential learning opportunities are opportunities to get more real world experience to complement your academic study while you're in a graduate program. And so within the business sector, business environment of graduate education, experiential learning can be key. Especially, let's say, if you're thinking about an MBA and you're looking to transition your interest into a new field, or potentially if you're coming from a more general background and then are looking to get into a more specialized area, having an internship, having opportunities for, concentrations, having opportunities for, potentially study abroad or internships. All of those things can be key in terms of adding on to the academic experience that you have in the classroom and then balancing it with the real world experience outside the classroom. Class size, you know, how big is the program that you're looking at? How big is the student body that you're looking at? Some students who may have had a larger experience in their undergraduate study might be looking for a smaller environment for graduate study, or potentially they're looking for a very expansive program. And so MBA, specialized master's programs can vary greatly by the size of the institution. At Brandeis, we are a smaller business school. We have a little less than 500 students typically. And you know, we have a lot of interaction within the classroom, so that the classes are small, where students are working very closely with the faculty. So that is something to think about, is how much interaction you want in the classroom with your peers, with your faculty, and that can potentially influence your choice as well. And finally, another key consideration would be something like the cost, any potential scholarship opportunities. Obviously, graduate business education is expensive. It's a huge investment in your future, but you also want to be cognizant of any particular scholarship opportunities that may be available at that institution. I'll talk a little bit in a little bit about some of the things to think about as you're considering scholarships in some of your programs, but what I would recommend is don't be immediately dissuaded by the cost of a program. Nowadays, especially in the US, you know, a lot of institutions are providing scholarships to students, both domestic and international students. And so very competitive scholarships can be offered to students, bringing that cost of the education, which is kind of that sticker shock, bringing that cost down considerably. So don't sell a school short just based on potentially the cost of or the perceived cost of that program. As we pivot just a moment to talk a little bit about Brandeis programs as it relates to some of the considerations that we just talked about, Brandeis International Business School offers 5 key graduate degrees, as well as some combination degrees if you have interest across more than one program. We have a Master of Arts in International Economics and Finance, which is a program that allows students to study more in-depth economics, finance areas. So your core classes would be in areas of economics, macroeconomics, econometrics, financial modeling, international trade, where you're studying both economics and finance and combining those into a more unique path. Concentrations are in areas such as real estate or analytics or marketing, financial economics. So it does give you a chance to go a little deeper. There's a consulting track if you're thinking about getting into some type of economic consulting. And this is a 2-year program that we offer. Our Master of Business Administration is a typical MBA. We have a number of different program options. We offer a full-time 2-year MBA. We have an accelerated MBA if you're thinking about moving through the program at a quicker pace, which would be just 1 year. We do have an option to do online coursework through the MBA as well. Although we obviously hope that students have the chance to study on our campus, we do offer remote coursework for the MBA if students are not able to be in the Boston area. Excuse me. The Master of Science in Business Analytics is another one of our specialized master's programs. This is a program where students are specifically learning advanced tools to analyze, interpret data, and be able to present data. And so you're learning both the analytics side in terms of the coding, the modeling, the sort of the statistical side of using the data, and then the business strategic side of things, which is learning how to use that data to make better decisions in organizations. The MSBA program is also available with some online options. So if, again, students are unable to get to campus, there are remote courses that are available through the MSBA. This program is typically 1 year or 16 months, just over a year, depending on if you want to take advantage of a more extensive internship experience in the US as part of that. Our last master's program is a Master of Science in Finance. Similar to the analytics, it's a very specialized degree. This one focused on the industry, the finance industry. And so students who might want to move up in the finance industry or are looking to take the CFA or pivot into the financial industry. The Master of Science in Finance is a 16-month, very specialized program that gives you those key financial goals and foundations, and allows you to also specialize in areas like fintech or risk management or valuation, corporate finance, asset management, to delve deeper into finance. We do have one PhD program. It's a PhD in International Economics and Finance. We have a very small PhD program. We enroll students every other year, depending on the program at business schools. Most PhD programs do enroll every year. So as you're considering graduate business programs, and if you are looking at PhDs, it will depend on whether you're thinking about the type of program, but some programs enroll every year and some may enroll on an every other year basis. Lastly, we do have some dual degrees, as we call them, which are opportunities to combine two of our master's degrees and complete both degrees in a shorter time frame. So whereas the MSBA would be 16 months and the MA would be 2 years, you're actually able to do those degrees together over the course of just over 2 years. So about 2 years and 2 summers. Similarly, there's an opportunity to combine the MSBA and the MBA, as well as the MSF and the MBA. One of the considerations that I mentioned is the location. As I talked about, Brandeis is located just outside of the city of Boston in Massachusetts. As I mentioned, it's quite a hub of both healthcare and technology, consulting, fintech. So there is a lot, biopharmaceutical companies. So there's a lot going on in the Boston area. What's exciting is that as also an educational hub in the United States, there are a number of very well-known institutions in the Boston area. And through a cross-registration opportunity that we have with other schools, Brandeis students have the chance to take classes at other institutions in the Boston area. So you could attend Brandeis, but potentially take a class at Boston University, for example, if you were interested in studying there for a class, or you could study at Tufts University in the Boston area, or Northeastern, or MIT. So there's lots of options within that area as well. As we talked about in terms of considerations, the opportunities for career networking opportunities is very key to your graduate business program. At Brandeis, we invest a lot in the individual student. I think it's a very important consideration as you're thinking about graduate business education, is to think through what types of career opportunities exist at the school, and what does the school do to connect you to alumni and employers, both locally and worldwide. Brandeis International Business School attracts students from all over the world, and so as such, we have developed an alumni network in over 130 countries. And so students have a number of opportunities through mentorship programs or executives and residents to engage with company and alumni executives across the world at various institutions. Our career office works very closely with students to develop your career strategies, whether it's to stay in the United States after graduation, or to return to your home country, or to potentially study in another region of the world. And so we work closely with students on their individual career search in order to determine kind of the best way to do it. Most of our programs do include an internship or field project experience. What those do is STEM students, many of our students will do a full-time internship as part of their program between their first and second year. Many students will work in the Boston or other area of the United States and in key cities, and some students will work either in their home region again or in other areas, but a lot of students will intern in the United States. And then we also offer field projects, which are opportunities for students to serve in a consulting role with a company to help them solve a problem. I mentioned experiential learning opportunities. you know, this is something key that I think as you're considering graduate business programs is to inquire about, is look at the school that you're considering to determine what types of experiences will I have outside the classroom to help supplement what I'm learning in the classroom. So at Brandeis, for example, we do a number of experiences for students to be able to connect with companies. We offer an industry trek program where we bring students both throughout the United States as well as to various cities across the globe to visit companies, to network with our alumni in those regions, to give students a sense of what it would be like to live and work in those regions of the world. We've had students who have traveled on these industry treks and engaged in connections that have led them to both internships and full-time job opportunities. I talked a little bit about internships and field projects. We also offer unique opportunities for study abroad or Hassenfeld immersion trips, which are other opportunities for you to visit major you know, global and economic financial hubs across the United States or worldwide to sort of experience how business is conducted in those regions. As you're thinking through the application process for graduate business schools, each school will have their own set of application requirements. And so it's important as you're thinking about the schools is to be very clear about what schools require what pieces of an application. Some of the application requirements which are here and which I'll talk about are pretty standard at most business schools in the United States. Most schools have some version of an online application or an application fee. Most schools will require some type of either personal statement or essay where you are responding to a question that they have posed in their application. So at something like Brandeis, I think we're typically looking at, you know, the reasons that you're interested in pursuing that degree. You know, why are you interested in this specific area? What do you think you want to do with the degree? That tends to be a more standard type of program question is sort of looking at your future and thinking about what you're thinking about doing, what you're interested in studying, why is now a good time to go to graduate business school. Essays are things that can be very influential in the application process because it gives the admissions committees in the schools a chance to really learn more about the student, sort of beyond what they traditionally see in the other aspects of the application. So it is important to spend time on your essay, make sure you're responding directly to what the school is asking, have others proofread it, have them take a look at it to see if your message is clear. Your essay really is a great way for you to sort of demonstrate more about yourself on a personal level. Your resume or CV is pretty standard in terms of a graduate business application. Different schools have different requirements for letters of recommendation. At Brandeis, for example, most of our programs require 2 letters of recommendation. Some are looking for more specific professional, academic, or professional letters of recommendation, while some programs are thinking about more academic letters of recommendation. So you can pay attention to that in the process. When you're thinking about who would write your letter of recommendation, I think it's important for you to reflect on who knows you well. You know, who could speak about your preparation for graduate school, why a particular program is of interest to you, and that person can draw upon some of the experiences they may have had with you in order to speak about your potential fit for that program. It's not as important in letters of recommendation to get somebody extremely high profile or to get the president of an organization at which you work. I think it's more important to find a recommender that knows you well and can really speak to you and draw upon your experiences in terms of, you know, what it is that you could uniquely contribute to that graduate school. Transcripts is usually very standard for graduate schools. And so students are looking at in terms of the, your academic history. So schools at which you've studied, if you've done some graduate coursework already, schools are looking for that full education, the full educational history of the student, and, really getting a sense of where the student excelled academically, where the student may have struggled, how did they do over the course of their program, where have they studied, did they study in their home region, outside of their home region. So these are a few of the things that we're looking at in terms of students' academic history. It does not just boil down to a GPA. So it's not just about whether a student has a specific GPA or not. It really is sort of the culmination of your educational experience and whether the school feels that you have the right background in terms of preparation for that graduate business program. The Gmat Gre is a standardized test that many institutions in the US do still require. Brandeis University, Brandeis International Business School, made the decision to stop requiring the Gmat or GRE in light of the pandemic. It initially became very difficult for our students to be able to access the test. But as we started looking at our own process and the information we were getting from the application, we decided to forego the requirement moving forward. So if you have already taken the Gmat or GRE or plan to take it and wish to submit your score to us, we are very happy to consider that in your application. But we don't require it anymore as part of your application. So if you have not already taken the exam or are not planning to, you would not need to submit a score for us. We would require for students who studied outside of the US or other specific countries, we would require some type of English proficiency score. Again, this is fairly standard for schools in the US in terms of what they're looking for if students did study in a non-English speaking country. And so we would be looking for at Brandeis a TOEFL score or an IELTS score. We also accept the Duolingo English test, which is a new test that is, the convenience is that it is available at home to you. And it is a slightly less expensive exam than traditionally the TOEFL or the IELTS. So that is potentially another good option. So if you are going to take the Duolingo, you may find that that has also increased in terms of the schools in the US that are taking that exam. Lastly, video essay, that tends to be a more specific Brandeis requirement, although you may see that at other graduate business program in their applications. Our video essay is a chance for you to record yourself responding to some specific interview questions. It is a very personalized experience. The questions are randomized and they are not meant to be sort of academic challenging questions. These are questions that are meant to learn more about your personality, what your interests might be, why are you interested in our school, something about your background. So they are very brief responses to questions, no more than a minute. And students will send that in with their application and will be prompted to do so during the application process. I talked earlier about cost and scholarships being one of the considerations to think about. Scholarship opportunities can vary greatly across the types of schools that you're considering. Some schools have specific deadlines that students have to apply by. So in addition to applying for their program for admission, some schools may also have other deadlines for students to be considered for scholarships. At Brandeis, it is an automatic consideration. So students who, as long as you submit an application to our programs, we will automatically consider you for our merit-based scholarships. And when you are notified of admission, if you are, if you are admitted, we do also notify you in your admission letter if you've received a scholarship. Scholarships at Brandeis can be quite competitive. We have scholarships anywhere from $5,000 up to full tuition. and we do typically have full tuition scholarships available across each of our master's programs. Our PhD is small, and like many other PhD programs in the US, most of the students who are admitted into our PhD program are fully funded. They receive full tuition waivers, a health insurance stipend, and a health living stipend, as well as like a teaching assistant opportunity as well. If there are other opportunities for either scholarships or financial aid, those are typically found on the individual school's website. Most of our scholarships are merit-based, although we do have some scholarships that are actually designed for students from either particular regions of the world or from particular backgrounds or based on particular areas they wish to study. So Brandeis, like many other schools, lists our scholarships on our website for which you may be eligible. And so you can take a look through the scholarships at schools to see if there are some that you believe you qualify for. Lastly, there are some international student loans that have emerged in the United States. It used to be that it was very difficult for international students to secure a loan in the United States, as it often required somebody who's a US citizen to be co-signing the loan. However, there have been some new companies such as Empower Finance, which is a company that does offer loans to international students to study in the United States, and it doesn't require a US co-signer. Prodigy Finance is another company that does offer loans for some of our programs as well. So these are some other opportunities aside from any of the scholarships for which you may qualify at Brandeis. Lastly, I just want to spend one moment talking about sort of the application deadlines. You know, similar to kind of other pieces, this may vary based on the graduate business program to which you're applying in the school. Some schools in the United States offer rolling admissions, which means that you really, as soon as you're ready, you can submit your application. Usually rolling admission is on an ongoing basis, where once the school receives your completed application, they can get you a decision, you know, within a few weeks on an ongoing basis. Other schools have round-based admission, where students apply by specific deadlines in the cycle, and then they also receive a decision then at a certain time after that deadline. So schools might have a deadline, a notification date, so the date by which you would hear your decision, and then if a school requires a deposit, it is typically towards your tuition. So it is a deposit that you're putting to secure your enrollment, and that is then applied toward your tuition. At Brandeis, we are round-based admission. So for spring, for example, we have a term that starts in January, and we are accepting applications by either November 1st or December 1st. If a student, for example, were to apply by November 1st, they would find out in early December if they were admitted. If a student applied in early December, they would find out by the end of December as to whether they're admitted, and so on. So, and then we also offer a fall admission. The fall term for us begins in August, and students can apply at any one of the 4 deadlines: November 1st, January 15th, March 1st, or April 15th. At Brandeis, like many other graduate schools, it is encouraged for you to apply, you know, as early as you can. I think for a lot of schools like Brandeis, although we may have a very robust scholarship program, the money, you know, we do begin awarding the money in the first round. So the later you apply in the process, unfortunately, the less likely there may be funding available. So it is something to think about as you're preparing your applications, is to think through, you know, when is a good time? When will I feel ready to apply? You know, when will I hear from that school? Is there a particular date by which I want to hear, in which case you might want to apply by a specific deadline? When are my other schools accepting applications? And so there are some things to think about as you're looking through it. Again, these are application deadlines, as I talked about on the previous slide. Some schools might also have separate scholarship deadlines, so you have to be aware of those as well. I've put my contact information up here. As I mentioned, I am with the business school admissions team at Brandeis. We have had the pleasure of visiting Sao Paulo a number of times. We typically get to the region every year. We, unfortunately, obviously, given the situation, we have not been able to travel this year, but we were obviously delighted to have the chance to engage with you through the EducationUSA network. And, you know, we definitely look forward to returning to Sao Paulo in the very near future, hopefully. But in the meantime, if we're not able to engage with you in your own region, we do encourage you to reach out to us if you wanted to talk online or via chat or an email. We're always happy to talk further with you. So I hope this information was helpful as you're considering graduate school in the US. And if you are interested in learning more about Brandeis, I look forward to talking further.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
Nope.
I don't know if anybody has any questions. Se tiverem alguma pergunta, podem enviar no chat que eu passo para Kelly. Só para vocês saberem, né, o que é o EducationUSA. A gente é uma organização vinculada ao Departamento de Estado dos Estados Unidos, né? A gente oferece esses eventos, né? Então, se vocês ainda não seguem a gente nas redes sociais, sigam no EducationUSA SP no Instagram ou EducationUSA São Paulo no Facebook, que você consegue acompanhar a nossa agenda completa. A gente também oferece as traduções certificadas que são necessárias, né? Toda a documentação que estiver em inglês precisa estar em português para ser enviada para as universidades, e a gente ajuda também vocês com todo o processo de aplicação. Então, se vocês tiverem qualquer tipo de pergunta, fiquem à vontade para fazê-las agora. I think the presentation was very helpful, Kelly. You were able to talk about the different aspects of the application and also how they apply to Brandeis.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting how you also changed the testing policies.
Yeah.
That's very good to hear.
It is, yeah. Yeah,
and
I
also
think
with Duolingo.
Exactly. Yeah. So we, you know, we had been using Duolingo at our undergraduate admissions office at Brandeis. And so we explored it at the business school and have found it to be a great option for students. Not only in this time, obviously, this unusual time of the world, but also in terms of just the accessibility of the test in their home and the cost. And then the Gmat or GRE, you know, we will find that, you know, a lot of emphasis will be put on students' academic background. And so certainly if a student has a score that they believe will be beneficial, they can certainly submit that. But not having that requirement, I think we're hopeful will open it up to students who may have been reticent about trying to prepare for that type of exam. And so, yeah, we're obviously hoping that, you know, students will take advantage of that opportunity to apply without the test. So.
Great. And I have a question. How long before the starting date of the program do you recommend people to start preparing their application? Oh,
sure. You know, I would say that most of the pieces that take more time are the essay and the letters of recommendation. I think it is never too early to start thinking about who you would want to write your letters of recommendation. And we actually recommend, you know, talking to your recommender in advance, giving them a sense of, you know, what program you're applying to, why are you interested in doing the program. I think it can help recommenders get a better sense of how they can relate their experiences with you to, you know, the value of what that degree might bring. So recommendations, I think, give your recommenders plenty of time. I think we often see that students are applying right at a deadline and then the recommenders are sort of rushing to get them in. So, you know, like at Brandeis, if you go into the application and enter your recommender's information, they'll get notified about that request even before, you know, you need to submit the application. So it's nice to kind of get going on that. The other piece that does take more time is the essay. And so I think for students who maybe have not done a personal statement or, you know, would like, you know, to kind of spend more time thinking through that, most schools do make their essay questions available in advance. And so students can start thinking about that as well. So I think those are usually the main pieces. Testing, you know, again, with obviously the convenience of Duolingo, it does take a little bit of the time out of the cycle in terms of having to wait for, let's say, a TOEFL test or something. But, you know, if for students are interested in preparing for that, that is something to think about. We see students who will plan, you know, 6 months to a year in advance, and we see others that, you know, have been thinking about it for a really long time, and then kind of once they make the decision to do it, they'll move through the process very quickly. So it does depend kind of where students are at in the process and how far sort of into the research and like, are they ready to do it? For us, if you're thinking about applying for spring, I would apply by the November 1st deadline. And for students who are thinking about applying for fall, we generally recommend applying by the January 15th deadline.
Thank you. We have a question from Caroline. She says,
Sure.
Hello, Kelly. I have a question. Does the payment for the semester work normally? Because here in Brazil, the value of the semester is divided into 6 installments. So we pay the tuition monthly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does that work at
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yeah, so it is similar. So in the, you would be charged for a semester at the beginning of the semester, and you have 2 options. You can either submit full payment, or you can do as you do in Brazil, where you've set up a payment option where you pay in installments. And so it is typically similar. It's usually about 5 payments over the course of the semester for that tuition. So students would just choose which option they want to do.
That's great. That's great to hear, because I think sometimes people see the tuition at one piece, and that's very different from how Brazilians talk about like the tuition price for schools here. We usually see how they cost monthly, so sometimes
oh, interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is I wasn't kidding about the costs you know, of schools are very expensive, and so I think definitely, I think it's a great point when you start to look at schools. I would not, you know, don't immediately discount a school based on that cost, because not only do you have this option to pay over the semester, but, you know, there are, again, a number of very generous merit scholarships, both at Brandeis and other schools. And so students, you know, should apply, and then obviously they get that decision with their scholarship offer up front at Brandeis. And so it gives students kind of a better picture of whether or not it's doable for them, rather than sort of deciding up front that they can't do it.
That's great. Thank you. She says, that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks.
I don't know if anybody has any other questions, if you want to take this chance to ask them. But I think it was a very helpful presentation. And once again, we'll make this available on our YouTube so that you can watch it again if you missed some part of it. And also, you have our contact information. Kelly has made hers available. Se vocês quiserem entrar em contato com EducationUSA, no nosso site educationusa.org.br, você encontra o escritório mais próximo de você. Se você quiser falar direto com o EducationUSA em São Paulo, né, representado por mim, Luane, e pelo Davi, você encontra a nossa informação nas nossas redes sociais, no EducationUSA SP ou EducationUSA São Paulo. Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk with everyone. I'll stop sharing and get a chance to say goodbye to everybody. Please reach out if there's any other questions. I look forward to being of help in any way I can.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.